Hello, everyone. I'm sharing you my presentation, and then we will start with conditional access and app control. Okay, so first of all, this is a session at Microsoft 365 Friday, California, and definitely, let's say, thanks to all our sponsors, which make events like this happen, even in the actual times with all the Corona stuff around us. So really happy to have this session here. Of course, because it's 10 o'clock in Germany, where I'm located. But I think also some others of you are just in the morning, in the middle of the day, or maybe also in the evening than me. Okay, let's start the session. It's about conditional access and app control. And okay, it's in the developer track, but it's definitely not a developer session. So if there are some developers here in the audience, feel free to switch, but I'm also happy if you stay because it's definitely an interesting topic. My name is Nicki Borell. I'm a consultant from Germany. I'm one of the founders of the company Experts Inside and the head behind the label Experts at Work. So what we normally do in our daily business is technical and strategical consulting with customers here in Germany and even in the whole Europe region. I'm an MVP for Office Apps and Services and regional director. And today we are talking about cloud app security in combination with conditional access policies. So the key takeaways from this session, we're just talking a little bit about what is cloud app security, and also what is Azure Active Directory conditional access. And we will see some real-world scenarios and examples how these features can be worked together to set up a secure environment, which is even in the actual time with all the home office policies and so on, a really interesting topic. So we did a lot of projects last year in the context of these scenarios. So can I use my private device to access company data? And are there any restrictions, or do we have the chance to set up restrictions if someone uses a private device, and so on and so on. And we will even have some demos about further feature integration and scenarios. So for example, scenarios like, okay, you can use an unmanaged device or a private device, but if you download a document, it's automatically applied with a label. Or scenarios like a combination of Cloud App Security and Windows Defender. And with this, let's start with the session. So Conditional Access App Control, it is a combination between the two features, Cloud App Security and Conditional Access. So let's start with Cloud App Security. What is Cloud App Security? Cloud App Security is just a security broker, which is a service in Microsoft 365, but it's an independent service. So it's not an Azure feature. It's also not an Office 365 feature. It's just an independent feature. It can be used to do several things. You can use it to control app usage. You can use it to monitor, to get an overview about alerts, and you can also use it to do stuff like shadow IT assessments and so on and so on. So, but this session is not about Cloud App Security, but Cloud App Security is one of the main features we're talking about in this session. So from a high-level perspective, in Cloud App Security, we can just configure policies based on, for example, devices, on users, or even on locations. And then we have the security broker, which then gives us a chance to set up policies which are kicking in when a user is trying to access different apps. So from a high-level perspective, or from a perspective to get its strategy, normally it's a little bit like this. So in the company, you have, let's say, some apps which are not regulated. Everyone who wants to use it can do this, like, for example, Twitter, YouTube, or whatever, even from a company device. And then you have apps which are definitely here to fulfill business scenarios. So, for example, Microsoft 365 or Office 365, but also other stuff like Salesforce, Box, Dropbox, whatever. And then there's this third category of apps you definitely don't want your users to deal with these apps. So apps like maybe features you know about File Dropper, which is just similar like OneDrive for Business, a service you can use to share files to externals. But it's definitely from the security and compliance, and also from the law perspective, like GDPR, File Dropper is not one of the most secured or most manageable apps. So maybe you say, okay, I don't want my end users to use those apps. And also this is something we can do with Cloud App Security. And on the other side, we have this feature, Azure Active Directory Conditional Access. Well, there's a feature that is used to set up, from a simple perspective, if-then statements. So if a user is just accessing using an unmanaged device, or if a user is just accessing from a unknown network, or whatever your statement is, and then you can configure what should happen if this scenario kicks in. So for example, you can say, okay, allowed access anyway, or you can force the user to use MFA, or maybe you can block the access. And this rule set can be combined with a redirect to Cloud App Security. So in this scenario, Cloud App Security is just used as a proxy. And this is this scenario. So a combination of these two features. And with this, we can, for example, set up policies like when a user is just access your environment with an unmanaged device, the user is prompted for multi-factor authentication. Okay, but in addition, we can use Cloud App Security to control what he is doing after the login is successful. So for example, the user isn't allowed to download anything because of its unmanaged device. Or maybe if the user downloads a document, the document is automatically protected. We will see this in the demo during the session. From the conditional access point of view, it's about the initial rule set. So we have different options which we can use in conditional access. It's about features we can configure. We will also see this in the demo. And from a scenario perspective, it's focusing stuff like, for example, block access anyway, or stuff like protect on download, as I already mentioned. We can do also stuff like block upload of, let's say, malware infected files. This is all stuff that Cloud App Security offers us. And conditional access is the initial rule set to say, okay, there is just some parameters fulfilled, which forces this request, this access, using Cloud App Security as a proxy instance. So here again, some examples. I think I already talked about this, the chances we have, and we will also see this in the demo. So from a scenario perspective, talking about conditional access app control, let's see this example, and this is what I will show you in the demo in the next slide. Is, let's say, for example, there's a user called Oliver Hardy, whatever, tries to download a document from a Teams channel. So it means it's stored in SharePoint. And this document is just labeled as confidential. And because of this, the download is blocked. Or even other scenarios, which you can see here in these examples. But let's do a demo to give you an idea how the end user perspective is. And also after I show you how the end user perspective is, I show you how this is be done, or how this is be set up from admin perspective. So I'm here in my Office 365. I'm a demo tenant, and as you can see, I'm logged on with the user Oliver Hardy, which is the demo user here in my tenant. And everything's normal from a user perspective, even from an end user perspective. And this user says, okay, let's navigate to Teams. And clicking on Teams will just bring me to the Teams app. But as you can see, if you're just looking at the link here on the top, even from a technical perspective, you see this is not a normal Teams link here. So it's just ending with .cas.ms. So it's .cloudappsecurity.microsoft. And also from the end user perspective, there's just this pop-up saying your access is monitored. So normally, from what I know from our customers where we set up this, even this pop-up message that the access is monitored is just a good thing to let users not do anything they should do. But anyway, the user says, okay, continue to Microsoft Teams. And again, from an end user perspective, even if this user is not really familiar with IT or technology, the Teams features, functionality, and end user point of view is a normal Teams view. Again, You can see from the link perspective, it's redirected using Cloud App Security as a proxy. And after the Teams web app is loaded, I show you the demo, what happened if this user tries to download a document. So I'm here in the environment, and in this team, there is just in the Files tab, 2 documents. And as you can see, there's this SharePoint 2030 document. And let's say from a normal user perspective, he says, oh, this is an interesting document. And normally if a user says this is interesting, he says, okay, I downloaded it on my device. So maybe I can have a look at the document when I'm in the train or after I'm home sitting on my sofa, or for whatever reason. The end user says, oh, interesting document, I want to download it. And he clicks on download. And you see what happened. There's a pop-up says download is blocked. And even if you're just looking in the left corner, you see, okay, something is downloaded. Even this pop-up says download is blocked. So I'm closing this pop-up and see what is downloaded. And the download is a text file, which again says the download is blocked. So in fact, the Word document isn't downloaded by this user. But what happens if I open this document here in the web browser? And as you can see, the document is just opening up. The user can use the document. He can also edit the document or whatever he wants to do with the document. Only download isn't allowed to this user. So you can see the document is coming up, normal behavior, and I can edit the document if I want to. No problem with this. Okay, so now let's see how this is set up from an admin perspective. And to do this, I switch the screen I shared to you. So it's the same tenant, but now I'm logged in with my admin user, and I'm here in Azure Conditional Access. And as you can see, there is this MCAS demo, MCAS Microsoft Cloud App Security demo. And clicking on this brings me to the details of the setup. So because I'm not sure how many of you are really familiar with conditional access, let's do a really short overview because it's not a conditional access session, but you need to know what conditional access can do. So you can configure parameters like users and groups. And as you can see here in my scenario, I shrinked it to special users. So Oliver Hardy and Stan Laurel. For all other users, this policy isn't getting active. And the next thing is I configured 7 cloud apps actually, and you will see in one of the next steps why this is really interesting, that we can configure cloud apps or specific cloud apps here in conditional access. So for all the other apps, let's say a user is just opening Stream or Power Apps or whatever, this policy also don't kick in. Then we have other chances, but the interesting one is the session control here at the end of the list. So I open this, and as you can see, I have different capabilities. I can say use Conditional Access App Control. This is what I did here, but I also can configure stuff like sign-in frequency or persistent browser chat allowed, yes or no, and which values. But in this scenario, I used the feature Conditional Access App Control. And in the dropdown, you can see there are 2 defaults. I can say only monitoring, or I can say block download, which is the same user behavior that I showed you in the demo. And of course, I can say use custom policy. This is what I did here. And if you select use custom policy, the next step is just configure custom policy. And clicking on this, as you can see, a new browser window opens up, and it redirects me automatically to Cloud App Security here in my tenant. And I'm just redirected to the Conditional Access App Control Apps section in Cloud App Security. So you can see there is a long list of cloud apps which are registered here. And this is necessary to set up policies focusing these cloud apps. This is one of the next demos I show you. But first of all, let's see the policy which forces the block download I showed you from the end user perspective of Oliver Hardy. And to do this, I have to navigate to Control and then the policies. see a long list of policies, so even a bunch of pre-configured policies by Microsoft, which are available when you activate Cloud App Security in your environment. And let me search the policy for Oliver. Here it is, the demo policy for Oliver Hardy. I open this and then you can see the details. Okay, there are some stuff like name, description, and so on. And then we have this wizard. And this wizard is standard for every policy you configure in Cloud App Security. And here, as you can see, I say, okay, I focus it to Office 365. I focus it to the user Oliver Hardy. We can set up a lot of other things here to fulfill enterprise business scenarios. But for my demo, this is good to go. And scrolling down, I have the action section. Before we come to the action section, let's have a few at the inspection methods. We can also combine this in the context of say, okay, let's use a so-called inspection method. And for example, find out is if a special word is, let's say, in a document the user tries to download. So the simplest example is if a user tries to download a document and in the document the word top secret is just typed, then the download should be blocked or whatever. So these are the enterprise scenarios you can configure here. We have also the advanced tab, which brings us a chance to be really complex because of normally business scenarios can also get really complex. Okay, but then let's talk about the actions we have here. So, okay, test, it's just only resulting in alerts here in the logging. And here you can see I configured block. I notified the user, the pop-up is coming up, and the download is blocked. As you can see, I also have another chance. I can say protect. So that means the user can download the document, but if the user downloads the document, automatically one of the labels here in my tenant is applied to the document during the or before the download, and then the download happens. As long as the document is not downloaded, it's unprotected in your Office 365, in your document library, wherever you stored it. But if the user downloads it, then a label is applied. And with this, back to the slides. Okay, so let's talk about how to set up this from a basic IT architecture setup. So because of the first step we have to do is we have to register the app, which should be covered by a conditional access policy under registered apps here in Cloud App Security, as a screenshot shows. And I will also have a demo about this. So normally there is the way you have these plus icon here and you can click it and then you can just, or you need to figure out technical parameters about the link to the app and so on and so on. I'll show you this in the demo. But there's just another way, which is much more easier to register apps here in conditional access, to use them in combination with with conditional access policies. And the way to do this is using conditional access, configure a new policy. In this policy, configure the app you want to have a policy for, and then make sure that a user is accessing this app. So the conditional access policy is just kicking in. And this results in that the app is registered here under conditional access app controls in Cloud App Security. This only works for the so-called featured apps. And I will show you a demo how this works. With this, I'm switching back to my browser. Okay, so we are here back in Cloud App Security, and just let's have the overview about the connected apps that are already configured here in my demo tenant. As you can see, it's this list of apps, and just going through these apps, you can see there are some apps still missing from the so-called features apps, which are normally the Microsoft 365 apps. But before I just show you the simple trick using conditional access, let's see how is the legacy way. It's about using this plus symbol, and then as you can see, we have a drop down about apps that can be configured here to set up policies in this context. It's a long list of apps we can configure. Let's, for example, say using Salesforce. Using Salesforce, we can use the wizard, and as you can see, there's a chance to upload a metadata file, or we can configure it manually. And this starts with, as I said, which is the endpoint, which is the link to the app, and so on and so on. So you have to provide all these informations, which is not the easiest way because of maybe you don't know these detailed information that are coming through the setup process. And this is because of, and this is the reason why we can also use the other way to configure apps here. And this is the way, let me see which app is still missing. Oh, I think there are a lot of apps already registered, but yeah, okay. So for example, Word Online is not registered here as an app. So let's say we want to use Word Online. That means going to our Cloud App Security policy using this section and then say, okay, we need just another app here. And let's navigate to this. Let's see. Okay, Word Online is not a featured app here in this context, but we can use, so as an example, Power BI is already configured, but what is not configured is Power Apps. So let's say we use Power Apps. Yes, this is available here. So okay, I select Power Apps and say, go for it. Now it's in the list here, and now I click Save. As you can see, the pop-up comes up and says it maybe can take several minutes to get it active. But anyway, let's try, because of the way is navigating back to the session, to my browser session where the user Oliver Hardy is logged in. And this user is now accessing Power Apps, which means the conditional access policy kicks in, and this results in Power Apps is getting registered under Conditional Access App Controls in Cloud App Security. So I'm here in the portal, logged in as Oliver Hardy, as you can see, and now let's open Power Apps. Let's see what happens if the system is fast enough in the back. No, probably not, because of if the policy would be active, it would be result in that I get the pop-up that my access is monitored. Let's give us one more chance. I just log out and sign in again. And let's see if this helps. Okay, I'm signed in again, but still it don't shows up. So, but anyway, because of otherwise we are running out of time. This is the way that can be used to easy register apps that you want to use for conditional access app control policies. And with this, I switch back to the slides. Let's do it like this. When we are done with the slides or with the session, we can again have a look at this demo, and I think then the few minutes are over and the feature is here. But let's talk a little bit about the theory behind this. So from the starting process, to make it clear how it works, the easiest way is to set up a conditional access policy for this app or even for those users. Use the feature, use Conditional Access App Control, and be sure that the conditional access policy kicks in for the first time. This results in that the app is registered in Cloud App Security, and based on this, we can set up policies in Cloud App Security to enforce our scenarios. Like, as I say, apply a label on download, block download, whatever the scenario is that you want to cover with this. I put you a link in the slide deck to my blog where I explain this step by step, also with screenshots, how to do the setup. And with this, let's talk about some advanced features and integrations. So we can integrate a couple of other security features in Cloud App Security. One of it is Microsoft Defender. And we have to configure this in Cloud App Security and also in Microsoft Defender admin overview, admin portal. So here's a screenshot shows it's really simple. You have only to activate this integration with a simple slider here. And also in Cloud App Security, it's just a simple checkbox you need to activate to have the security or have this integration set up. And this results in a scenario. You remember at the beginning of the session, I remember this. If you say there is a bunch of apps, you don't want your users to use these apps. So in result, with the example I already mentioned, you say file dropper should not be used. The result from an end user perspective is this. So the user tries to open file dropper, and as you can see, Microsoft Defender is just blocking the access because of Microsoft Defender is just interacting with Cloud App Security. And in Cloud App Security, we have configured that file dropper, for example, should not be used. I'll show you in the portal how this can be set up. So in Cloud App Security, under Discover, we have the so-called Cloud App Catalog. And this catalog is just a really, really long list of apps. You can see a really high number of apps. And this is a really interesting thing because of also from a licensing perspective, this Cloud App Catalog is part of Azure ADP 1. So you don't need the full Cloud App Security license to use this Cloud App Catalog. And it gives you definitely an idea about apps because of no one knows all the apps maybe end users are interesting to use. Let's say, what about these WhatsApp feature? Oops, there's a typo. Here we go, WhatsApp. As you can see, it's just rated with number 6. So 1 is the best, 10 is the best, it's rated with 6. And if you click on this, you get a detailed list why Microsoft says the rating is 6. So even if you have a discussion with your, let's say, IT security officer, with your manager or whatever, and he asks you, why is WhatsApp bad, or why we shouldn't use Dropbox or whatever, and you don't have the right arguments, you can use this Cloud App Catalog to give you an idea why maybe the app is not the best decision, and the users shouldn't use WhatsApp but Teams to chat. But anyway, we're just talking about sanction functionality. And as you can see, here in this scenario, my demo tenant, the app is just tagged with green, so it is allowed. But I also have the chance to say, no, block this app, which means I sanction it. And this is what I have to do in Cloud App Security. Because of in the setup in Cloud App Security, I'll also show you this. It's here in the settings. I can let it interact with Microsoft Defender, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint this here. This is also active, and that results, I show you this in the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint portal. Here we are in this setting. So in the detailed settings of Microsoft Defender Security Center, you can see we have this indicator tab, and there are all the endpoints or the domains which should be blocked here in my demo environment. And as you can see, this is nothing I set up manually. It is created by Cloud App Security. So in this scenario, I'm just here in Cloud App Security in my app catalog and say, I want to block this app. Clicking this, it automatically results in these rules you can see here in my demo. So it's really simple from a management perspective, and it results in the user gets the information that he is not able to use this app and the access is blocked. Okay, let's go back to the slides. So there's just another interesting integration here in the scenarios about app protection and security. This is the integration with information protection. Because of if we activate this integration, this needs also only be done in Cloud App Security. It results in the capabilities you saw in the policy for Oliver Hardy. You know, we have this protect option and can say, okay, you can download the document, but if you download, I apply automatically the labeled credit card number or whatever. So this is the second integration we have. There's also a third one. It's the integration with Azure AD Identity Governance or Identity Protection, but this is not the context from this session, which is more about Cloud App Security and app protection scenarios. Okay, let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly with Cloud App Security and the integration with all these other features. As I said, we did a lot of security projects in 2020 because of the increasing home office use we had all over the world. And with this, we also saw that these products are still on a way with their integration. So there's a roadmap by Microsoft, and we are not at the end of this roadmap. So in some detailed scenarios, the integration is maybe just missing some features and some capabilities. I will show you some examples. The first is the integration with identity protection I already mentioned. Okay, this session is not about identity protection, but it gives you an idea of that these features are maybe at the end and in the detail are not 100% integrated. We have the capability and Microsoft is working on this. There is a roadmap, and I'm definitely sure that we will see some big steps forward also in this year. But as per today, we have some limitations. So for example, alerts are not synced between the different portals. We have alerts in Cloud App Security. We have alerts in Azure Security Center, in Microsoft Security Center, and so on and so on. And of course, from a user perspective or also from a CISO perspective, the request is to have a single point of truth. You don't want to click different portals to get all the alerts in your environment. From the high level perspective, and even from what we want to reach with Microsoft 365, is this high level one single point of truth. So featured or the features are Azure Sentinel or even Microsoft 365 Threat Protection Security Center in Microsoft 365. And all the other services are just reporting to these endpoints. And they do it today, definitely, but not in detail. So sometimes an alert is missing, or maybe it's a really, really special scenario is not covered per today. There's a really brilliant blog post by my MVP colleague Samuel. He described all the different scenarios and what is maybe missing and where you have to just navigate manually to the different portals to get an overview. Another thing that we know is that there is poorly actually no chance to tweak Cloud App Security policies to really the scenarios you have in your enterprise. So this is really a screenshot from a customer, from a project we did. And as you can see, Cloud App Security just generates a data exfiltration with an unsanctioned app alert. So this is focusing to an unsanctioned app, and Cloud App Security says, oh, okay, there's just an upload of 240 megabytes, and the normal upload size is definitely much more lower, only kilobytes. So also from this customer perspective, so the discussion we had with the CISO, and what I think is, upload of 240 megabytes is not really so untypical. But if your just baseline is 26 kilobyte, 240 megabytes is definitely unnormal. But poorly, there is no chance to configure these thresholds manually. So as per today, false positive alerts can be possible in Cloud App Security. With this, let's see how such a project is done with the customer, because we talked now a lot about the technical setups, about all the different scenarios, and even about some bad and not so 100% integrated other features. But really, from a high-level perspective, from a project perspective, how do you start a project like this? And this is something we definitely also learned in the last years. We have some so-called security deployment actions, and these security deployment actions if you just try to cover them from a technical perspective, this is a really strange thing. Maybe some of you know this overview. It's just from an official Microsoft deck, and I just put it in a little video to give you an idea how complex and also how powerful the Microsoft security stack is actually. Let's say 5 or 8 years ago, Microsoft wasn't a big name in IT security, but as per today and even in the last years, it is. So we're in the upper right corner on all these Gartner Magic Quadrants, maybe you know. And because of Microsoft is just getting this way to a real security provider in the international market, the features are getting more and more complex. So just to have a meeting with a customer and say, okay, I just show you all the Microsoft security features. You will spend the whole day talking, and at the end, so this is what I know from my customers, the customer is more confused because of it's really a bunch of features. But what is the best way to start a project like this? I'm just skipping the video, it's just looping. From a strategic consulting perspective, these when to use what question is something we know from collaboration and communication. So I started my career in enterprise IT with SharePoint, and even with SharePoint, I think it was 2007 or maybe 2010. We have the task lists, and we have also tasks in Outlook. And this was also a situation where customers ask, okay, what should we use? Should we use SharePoint task lists, or should we use Outlook tasks? And this is a similar situation we have now with security features. Should we do this with Cloud App Security, or are we good to go with conditional access? And so on and so on. And at the end of the day, the best way to get answers is using what we have. So I think you know these periodic table of Office 365. And for the periodic table of Office 365 also offers a periodic table about the security features. So if you know this solution or this website, you have scenarios, business scenarios, and clicking on the scenario, the periodic table shows you the options for features to fulfill the scenario. This can definitely help. And on the other side, we have some experiences with so-called design sprints. So design sprint is just a way or a framework to really interview the end users and even also the management to get an idea of what is your daily business, what are your daily requirements, because of at the end, it's not about features, it's about what should we reach, what should we archive, what are the business scenarios. And even this is definitely the same when we are talking about Cloud App Security and app control. So at the end, one of the next necessary steps is to do a mapping to the features, because of also the licensing question is answered by the scenarios you worked out using, for example, a design sprint. And this is when we come here to find out which features can be used. I just put here just a little bit an overview, a matrix to see that even we have the different scenarios and there are some features can be used to fulfill a scenario. And as you can see, per scenario, there are maybe 2 features can be used to fulfill a scenario. So this is the first step and definitely a necessary step to set up an environment that is really focusing the end users and also the company's needs. And if you're just more from a technical perspective, I definitely can just recommend the so-called Ninja training Microsoft offers. It's just a free training. I put you the link here in the slides. And you're going to all the steps focusing Cloud App Security and even Conditional Access App Control, which we have in this session, during this training. So again, a little bit from even a pitch perspective. How do you pitch this with your to your customer? How to get started? The recommendation is definitely work out your scenarios and requirements. As I said, for example, using a design sprint. So we love to use it. For us, it works brilliant. In this context, when it's about what are your scenarios and what are your requirements, also another high-level method or a high-level architecture maybe could help you. It's the so-called Zero Trust ID. So also Microsoft offers a lot of really good documentation and frameworks, what Zero Trust means and how Zero Trust can be set up. At the end, high level, it means you don't trust anyone or any device. And because if you say, I don't trust the device, I don't trust the user, even the login or whatever, this is the starting point to set up policies or to talk about policies. So for example, if I don't trust a device, what does it mean? So for example, it means you just apply a label on download or other examples. So if you just worked out your scenarios from with a design sprint or even from a zero trust perspective, the next is definitely a proof of concept. So just find a small group of users in the company and test your setup with them. You saw in conditional access, we have the chance to focus the policies to only specific users or let's say specific groups. And this gives us a chance to definitely test it with a small group of people before you roll it out to the complete company. After the proof of concept, do a test, even with the complete company, because of normally then scenarios come up you never thought about, like blue-collar workers using private devices, not using the public internet hotspot from the company, using their mobile internet access, whatever, scenarios you never thought about, do the testing. And then just integrate the feedback from the tests, rework your setup, and the last step, definitely do a real productive rollout and let your end users use the features to secure your environment. And with this, I'm at the end of the slide deck.